Hey guys, it's Audrey with Ducklings, and today I wanted to talk to you about something that we don't really address much in the crafting community, and that is ugly papers. You know what I'm talking about. You have them, I have them, all of these YouTubers and Instagrammers have them, but we just don't talk about them because we only want to focus on the beautiful and the cute, which is totally fine. A lot of times these ugly papers also come from collections that are super cute. We buy them because they've got a variety of papers that are just awesome, and we craft with them and love them till they get to this point where there's just a few papers left. And it happens for a variety of reasons. These papers are actually from the Dear Lizzie Stay Colorful collection, even though I love this collection. And this one, Carousel by Maggie Holmes, these papers are from that. This is a Tim Holtz paper. Even though we buy these collections and we love them, almost always we're stuck with these papers at the end that we're not quite sure, what to do with. Maybe there's a color scheme that we're just not into, or the pattern is just too busy, or maybe the aesthetic, this vintage vibe, or maybe even the marble theme, it just doesn't speak to you. So you're not quite sure what to do with them. So do they go back on the shelf? Do you recycle them? Do you toss them? What do you do with them so that they're of some sort of use? You spent the money on them, right? So why not find a way to use them? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you a couple of practical uses for these guys, and then you won't have to have these sitting on your shelf anymore. All right, let's get started.
So to start off, we're going to use the best side of these papers, which is the back side. You have a ton of white cardstock sitting around in your craft room, and you just didn't realize it, and it's on the back of your pattern papers. So I use the back of my pattern papers a lot for these things, and I encourage you to do the same. It's not really the best for like card bases because you want that to be completely white so that you can fold it over, but this is really great for things like stamping. You can stamp first and then color them in later if you've got like some Copics or something. I don't. I just put down some super tips and then stamped over it and then trimmed everything out. I also use the back of my cardstock as like a stamp cleaner, and you'll see a couple of other ways that I use this same piece of paper over and over and over again throughout my video, and it's basically just to help keep my craft space clean. So the first one, stamp cleaner. Now, a lot of you guys have these like little clear stickers and you struggle, and the issue is that you put them down and you can see the background kind of poking through and the image gets lost, right? So I just stick them down on the back of some white cardstock, which is the back of my pattern paper here in this case, and trim around them, and then you've got some cute little die cuts. Now for this paper, just orange. I don't like orange. I don't know. Nothing against orange. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't vibe well with me. So this page had so much orange on it, and then it had like the peach and the red and the yellow color combination, and I'm more of a cool colors kind of girl. So I kind of looked at this and I said, all right, so I've got a lot of stuff that I can cut out on here, and I wonder how these elements would look if they were just by themselves. So if you've got this big piece of like busy patterned cardstock paper and you're like, I don't really like this as a whole, ask yourself if you would like some of these elements individually. Would they vibe more with your style? Do you think there's a way that you could use them in a project that you would not normally use paper with this colors? And the great thing that you can do is you can kind of break it up. Because I'm chopping them into pieces, I can use some of these white flowers maybe in a project that has cool colors or is more muted or vintage, and then I can use some of these bright ones in another collection that has, or in a project that has kind of similar tones. So look at it and ask yourself, if I don't like this paper as a whole, if I chop it up, would I like to use it then? So another really quick tip when it comes to fussy cutting, when you've got a large 12 by 12 paper, cutting out all these little tiny pieces can seem really overwhelming. So in the beginning, I chopped it up into big sections, and then I took it a little bit at a time. Now for this paper, I'm also not a huge fan of red unless it's Christmas time or maybe Valentine's, and you know, this paper was red and pink and it's squares, and I don't know, again, just it wasn't my vibe. But I thought maybe if I toned it down a little bit, it wouldn't be so bad. So I just took some gesso, and you could also, you know, use white paint, or you could use even some colored acrylic and just put it over the top to give it another vibe. Now you'll see the paper that I cleaned my stamps off with earlier in the video. I'm also using that here around the edges to make sure that I don't paint onto my table. Now I'm messy, so I got paint on it anyway, but use your scrap paper or even your ugly papers to help protect your work surface. Now for my next project, I'm going to use some project life cards, some die cuts, and then some things that I have actually cut out of larger pieces of 12 by 12, and I'm going to create a masterboard. Now, if you don't know what a masterboard is, it's basically a big sheet of paper that you collage onto and then you cut up for other projects. Danny actually did a video on this earlier in the Crafty Camp series where she made some postcards, and this is very similar to that. Now, you could actually make 6 postcards from a 12 by 12, but what I did instead is I chopped this paper in half so that it's 6 by 12, and then I layered things on it, and eventually I'm going to cut it down into 4-inch pieces from here. The other 6 by 12 piece from the same paper, same huge pattern paper, I'm going to cut that up as well and use that as backing. And the reason for that is because sometimes these pattern papers aren't as sturdy, and so they don't make the sturdiest postcards to go through the mail. And then also, I am messy, so I get stuff on the back of the paper somehow. It always happens. It doesn't make sense, but it happens to me. And so I use the clean white side of the back of this paper to back it and make it look nice and clean so I can do some writing on there, or even maybe some stamping. Here's a close-up. Now the next way that I use ugly papers is I create prototypes with them. Just like when you make pancakes, the first one always comes out really crappy, right? Why is that? I don't know, but it always happens. And when it comes to crafty projects, it's the same way. So instead of using the nice pretty paper that I want to use for my project, I just use some of the ugly papers that I have in my stash. So you saw me creating Danny's mini tea bags there, and then also Nancy's trifold card here. I'm just getting a feel for it, you know? I'm making sure that I don't mess it up before I do it with the real thing. And this way it gives me a little bit of practice. It lets me kind of alter my measurements and figure out where I went wrong. And then of course I also like to use these as packaging, and the great thing about this is if you are packaging something up, it means you're probably going to be giving it away. So it's not going to stay at your house, it's going to go on to someone else's house and they can use it, or you know, they can add it to their craft stash with the rest of their embellishments. I don't know, it's up to them. Whatever they do with it when it gets to them, that's their problem. But create something using your ugly papers that's going to go somewhere else and give it away. And also, you know, other people may not have the same taste that you do, and so what to you may not be a pretty paper, to someone else they may love. Now, along that same vein of creating something that you're going to let go of, create something that you're going to let go of and you're going to send in happy mail. So I got 2 examples here. So the first one is to make just a washi card. I'm folding my paper in half so that it's double-sided, and I'm just making a tag. But you could stop here and make a tag and just send that along on its own. I'm sure your pen pal would really appreciate that, but I turned mine into a washi card and then added a little heart fastener there and some string to complete the look. And then what you could also do is take your ugly papers and make either an envelope or a little sack. So these are really easy to make. There's lots of tutorials out there, but basically it's 3 folds and then you just trim off the corner of these. and it starts out as an envelope. Fold everything together, glue it down, and then if you want a sack instead of an envelope, you just trim off the flap at the top. And then this is a really perfect way to send all your goodies. Everything that we made today can kind of fit into one of those little envelopes there. A final suggestion is to bulk up thin die cuts, layer them. So if you've got a pretty paper, layer some of your ugly papers in between. This also really works great for building bulk in thin shakers as well, instead of using foam. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this Craft Camp video today. Here is a close-up of all of the projects that we worked on. You know, look through your stash and find some of those ugly papers and give them some love. You know, make them feel pretty again. Bring them out and actually use them instead of storing them in the ugly paper bin or leaving them in the stack all alone by themselves. All right, see you guys in the next one. Bye!